to withdraw the amendment.
Moylan.
My Lords, my noble friend the Minister has a difficulty with his throat, and I commiserate with him on that. He also has, I think, a difficulty with the bill. He wants to have a bill which is actually highly prescriptive, but his answer to those who wish to amend it is that that would make it too prescriptive. And the question is, what are the bounds of prescription, and has he given an adequate defence of them? And, my Lords, it may be the heat, but I suspect we're condemned this afternoon to receiving a series of responses from the front bench which are not as adequate and embracing of our original ideas as one might hope. It's been a very important debate because it's about the principles underlying the bill. My noble friend said that there was a degree of confusion and contradiction in the debate. I mean, there's often confusion in debate when you have a broad number of topics to discuss, but I don't really think there was any contradiction if one understands that the debate on principles has been taking place, if you like, on two levels. One is what the principles should be, whether they should involve what the noble Lady Hayman of Ulloch has suggested should be incorporated, whether they should involve a certain interpretation of value for money, which we all agree has to be an element of it, but what that actually means, and so forth. And that has been the tenor of part of the debate. I have said, my Lords, I intend to remain neutral, in a sense, on that question. The second level on which we've been debating the principles is on the assumption that you can agree what the principles are, what role do they then play? That is, what purchase, what leverage do they give in the procurement process? And should, in particular, they be a basis on which disappointed contractors should be able to nitpick through a procedural bill in order to bring complaints when, in my view, it would be better if they were limited to doing that, if the broad principles of the bill, which we might have agreed on, had been breached. Lord Hope of Greighead, the noble and learned Lord, clearly grasped that point, and the noble Baroness Lady Hayman of Ulloch heartily agreed that we should ensure that there is a degree of flexibility in the tendering process so that unforeseen circumstances that lead to idiotic outcomes can be handled in a sensible way. My noble friend Lady Neville Rofe made a similar point that I'm going to quibble with her very slightly, because she used the word frequent, about frequent legal challenges to procurement processes. My Lords, in my experience, they're not very frequent, because what actually happens is precise attention to the detail of the process is often prioritised over sensible outcomes in order to avoid those legal challenges in the first place. So the structure of the approach that we're taking very often leads to poor outcomes in procurement terms, precisely to avoid legal challenges. But we congratulate ourselves on having done a successful procurement, even though we've got a suit with a pair of trousers with one leg shorter than the other, or something like that. Now, my noble friend did...
I'd just like to say on this business of frequent challenge, I think it would be quite useful to have some information before we discuss this again. Because my experience, and I've worked in the industry, admittedly not as an executive, is that there actually are quite a lot of challenges and that they do absorb quite a lot of resources. If in fact they're very rare, that's important as well.
A call for information is that I can heartily second. just to conclude then, my noble friend, the Minister, did say that he thought flexibility in response to the sort of circumstance I'm describing is desirable. To that extent, he agreed in principle with me and with the noble Baroness, and it is for him, I think, as we go forward, to show how he intends to instantiate that in his own amendments, perhaps, to the legislation, so as to give us that sensible, practical outcome. In the meantime, my lords, I beg leave to withdraw.
Is it your lordship's pleasure that this amendment be withdrawn?